You're listening to the Seahawks Insiders.
Geno looks, going to lay it up over the top. Got a man out there. It is locking. He has got it. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Getting you ready for Seahawks football every Sunday.
Hurts drops back, has time, loads up, throws. A.J. Brown, the defense. It's intercepted. Does he keep his feet in? He does. Seahawks ball.
Presented by Delta, the official airline of the Seahawks. Now, here's your host, Jen Mueller.
The Seahawks lead start to finish in the game against the Falcons on Sunday. They come out with a win, which makes everything better this week, John Boyle. Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I could do with a little bit warmer weather, but
hey,
it's crisp, it's sunny, it's good,
you know
it's
what?
a winning.
We're in late October and it's not raining.
Okay, that's a good point.
That's a win.
That is a good point. Yes.
Every dry day from here until like May, I'll call that a victory.
That's true. And every game day that is not raining from here on out is a really big win in my book.
Yeah.
But we had talked so much going into that game against Atlanta about the areas of obvious need for improvement for Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
In what way do you think they took care of those issues?
I mean, the most obvious one was the turnover differential. They've been struggling there on both sides of it. They've been giving it up too much. They've not been getting the takeaways. They're +3 in that game. And we heard players talk about last week, like, how do you get more turnovers? And a lot of it was like, well, you got to get ahead. So you're putting them in obvious pass situations. You're pass rushing it after it, and that's exactly what happened in that game. So that was the clearest one. The next one that jumped out to me was the run defense from first half to second half.
Yeah, and the numbers are starkly different,
Yeah.
right? Which I did not realize until kind of after the fact. I usually write down those halftime numbers because I want to know where they are in relation to their overall average on both sides, Seahawks and opponents. What I did not do was compare the final numbers.
You didn't do the math.
I did not do the math. I was told there would be no math. I did not do the math. And I think part of that is, and look, there's a lot of different reasons for that. Yes, did they clean up some of that second level stuff? Sure, they did. But also, playing with the lead changes what Atlanta has to do in the second half.
Sure. I mean, but even when they tried to run it early in the half, it was their two main running backs, 11 carries for 22 yards in the second half after they had, 117 on 15 carries. So they were still trying to run it some. But yeah, as you got further into the half and the lead expanded, especially after Derek Hall's touchdown, at that point they were in throw-only mode to try to catch up, and that's where you're able to, all of a sudden, the interceptions come.
By the way, how about Boye saying, yeah, I was going for that ball, and I just let Derek have it?
Oh, well, that was so nice of him.
It was so
what
nice
a
of him.
generous soul.
Really, they work well in tandem.
Yes.
You know, good teammate, yes, Boye Mafe. Also, I would hate to see a collision between those two.
Yeah.
That would have been painful.
Well,
so it's probably just
it all worked
better.
out. It worked
Also,
out great.
Spoon taking out the offensive
Flying.
lineman.
Yeah.
I went up and I talked to him afterwards, and I was like, that was a heck of a play. And he goes, that was a big boy. Like, I'm not going to shy away from anybody, but that was a big boy.
Luckily for
like,
him, their momentum was kind of, it wasn't a head-on collision. They were both running the same direction. So
yes. But when you take a look at that defense and those rushing numbers for opponents, they're still 28th in the league, 146-ish. yards allowed on the ground per game, which is one of the reasons why Seattle made a trade for a second straight week. I'm going to be honest, John. I have been looking at potential trades around the league. I was caught a little bit off guard when Seattle made this move this week.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily expecting it, but we've heard John Schneider say it for basically his whole career here. Is like they take pride in being in everything. They want to leave no stone unturned. So if they saw a guy out there that was available and they thought could be an upgrade for him, they're going to take a look at it. I mean, they've always been a pretty aggressive team when it comes to trades. So I like this move. You get, a young, pretty darn good linebacker who's done a lot of good things in his career so far, and hopefully he can help that defense.
Well, we actually haven't said his name up to this point.
Yes.
It's Ernest Jones. And
the fourth.
The fourth.
Yes.
I don't know the other
Which
three.
I forget where I saw this on Twitter. Kind of interesting. We've had 2 Jones the fourth now in recent years. Sidney Jones also.
Oh.
What are the odds?
Of all the things I'm going to remember about players, that wasn't going to be one of them. I'm
I
really
didn't
glad
remember
that
either.
you
This was
pointed that
somebody
one
else.
out. Thank you,
Somebody on
Twitterverse,
Twitter.
Xverse, whatever, for pointing that one out. And it is not like Ernest Jones IV just came onto the scene.
No.
He's a guy the team has had their eye on for a while.
It's a team decision. It wasn't just my decision, but he's a guy that I think when you look at kind of all fronts coming from John and our personnel people, our coaches, our experience with him, a guy that we've had respect for a long time, and just a really good football player, all the way around. I remember seeing him play in the Super Bowl. It was probably the first time that I kind of get on my map, and just excited to get him here and get him rolling. So, by all accounts, great person, loves ball, tough as nails, and we're excited to get him here.
I like the mention of the Super Bowl. He talked about, he followed up on that later, of kind of, you're watching the game and you're not really familiar with everybody out there, and you're like, oh, who's this linebacker? And then what he said is, once you're familiar with that guy, it keeps coming up on tape as you're studying tape around the league. And yeah, I mean, he's a player that, he came on strong that rookie year after taking over starting job. And last year, I believe he set a franchise record with 145 tackles for the Rams. So he's been a really good player so far. And again, I think he's a guy that, he's known to be a good run defender, but he can also pass rush. He can cover. He's kind of what you want ideally in a middle linebacker, and do a little bit of everything.
He also is familiar with Mike Macdonald's system because his coach in Tennessee coached alongside Mike in Baltimore, so they are running similar schemes with similar verbiage. Ernest Jones was a third-round pick in 2021. He did help the Rams win the Super Bowl, 6'1", 230 pounds, and it kind of reshuffles the deck in the middle of the field based on what his strengths are and T-Dots.
Yeah, that was one of the things Mike McDonald mentioned, is they like that Tyrell Dodson, when they signed him, they like his versatility. So he'll actually bump over and play weak side linebacker with Ernest Jones coming in to play middle linebacker. Now, there's a lot of overlap the two inside linebacker positions in most defenses overlap quite a bit. So it's not, you're not asking T-Dot to do something totally different, but there's going to be a little change there.
And Tyrell Dodson is still going to wear the green dot, so he is communicating out to the defense. That is not necessarily a weak side linebacker trait most often. Generally, that would be your middle linebacker. But also the reason you would move him to that spot, Ernest Jones I'm talking about, is because of what they know he does well.
Well, he does a lot of things really well, I think. You talk about making tackles, staying square at the point of attack. He's physical. I think he plays really hard. Also, good blitzer as well off the ball. Coverage skills, I think, are pretty dang good as well. So just an overall really good football player.
Basically described a linebacker. You got to cover. You got to be able to blitz.
Right.
You got to be able to stop the run. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and you were going to want to make those sure tackles against a Buffalo Bills team that can certainly score, that can certainly put up points, and that has maybe, depends on which category you're using, the best quarterback in the league, at least if you're looking at interceptions.
Yeah.
Because Josh Allen has zero.
And that's
zero.
Quite a departure for him, because as good as he's been over the years, the one sort of thing you could really critique with him is the turnovers. He's been a guy that, is among the league leaders in interceptions and turnovers since he's been in the NFL, 18 interceptions last year. So if he suddenly gets that out of his game, boy, that's
a problem.
That's a tough,
I'm really upset he's gotten that out of his game. By the way, those 18 interceptions last season, that was second most in the NFL. The only quarterback with more interceptions, Sam Howell. And we know part of that was the situations he was in trailing for the Commanders and needing to take shots downfield. Now, if you go back one more year, in 2022, Josh Allen threw 14 interceptions. That was tied for third most in the league. Now, here's what's happened. You might remember one of those games. I think it was the playoff game. It's the Bills, it's Kansas City, it's Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and they throw for over 700 yards. And it kind of just breaks, it blows your mind, and it kind of breaks the NFL in some of those categories. And since then, he has changed his approach thanks to golf. Have you heard
golf,
this?
You say?
Have you
no,
seen this?
I have not seen this. Fill me in, Jen.
Okay, so his coach, Sean McDermott, met Scotty Scheffler's caddy. Now, Josh Allen, huge golfer. Great golfer, has played in many of those celebrity kind of tournaments and televised opportunities. So McDermott meets Scheffler's caddy and starts talking about the idea of just kind of laying it up. It's just go for the single, right? Instead of trying to go for that deep shot on the fairway, just be consistent and hit it short yardage. I mean, it's not short yardage for me, right? But you're just kind of going for the singles instead of that home run ball. And it is one of the reasons that Scotty Scheffler has been number one in the world for 2 years. So now when you look at what Josh Allen is doing, he's got the arm to get it downfield, but a lot of his passes are actually within that 10-yard, 10 to 12-yard range. He's not doing it with a big arm, which is also what has cut down on the interceptions. And as a team, this is a tough team to get to. They've lost just two fumbles this year. So you're going to have to do something to disrupt this very easy, I say easy, pitch and catch sort of thing that they've got going.
I have an idea.
What do you got?
I'm going to take Josh Allen golfing so he can see some bad decisions on a golf course. Force some things.
Right.
Hit driver when you don't need to. And then, by Sunday, he'll be ready to throw some interceptions.
That's right. Right. You're going to model what not to do.
Josh, Saturday. Let's hit the links.
Let's do this. Well, you know what? Maybe Josh Allen takes a few more deep shots with Amari Cooper in the mix.
Yeah, that's a nice weapon they added.
It is. Now, last week, he only shows up for, 66 yards. He's got 4 receptions. Yeah. He also only played 18 snaps.
They're easing him in.
Yeah.
I would assume with another full week of practice, we'll see a little more of Amari Cooper. More, he's a guy that can play a lot of spots. They didn't do as much with him last week. Macdonald pointed that out, but they're fully expecting to see a more full complement of his game.
Well, and I think going along with that, why don't we just hear from Mike Macdonald? Because he does have some familiarity with him.
We can just
hear from him. Let's just hear from the coach.
John.
Well, it's tough with the sample size. You're just looking at one game and how they used him, so you're kind of assuming a growth in his role that they're playing on another week's preparation. But Amari's a guy that I'm familiar with, going against him in Cleveland for all those years, and he can make you pay. So you got to make sure you're on your P's and Q's. You're on him. He's a great route runner. He's got great hands. Kind of when he was in Cleveland, he was doing he was in all the different positions. They were moving around a good bit. Last week he was kind of only in one spot. You're assuming that's going to grow. So it's a tough projection, honestly.
Yep, I set that up so well. I got nothing else. I already,
I love this. I love this. John is rendered speechless. Yeah, absolutely speechless. The look on his face, almost priceless, minus the fact I was hoping he was going to say something. He could have said that Josh Allen is 12th in the league in total passing yards. By the way, Geno Smith is still number 1. Allen with just over 211 passing yards a game, certainly with Amari Cooper. That could be going up. I tell you what, why don't we pause right now, let John gather his thoughts, and let's hear from our fantasy insider, Scott Engel.
Thanks, Jen and John. We're in week 8 of fantasy football now. No teams on a bye, but lots of injuries, and we tell you how to deal with them all. We start at quarterback, Caleb Williams, top 5 fantasy quarterback for week 8 in that matchup against the Washington Commanders. Also at running back, Javonte Williams for another good week. The Carolina Panthers allowed the most fantasy points per game to running backs. The Dolphins also ranked 26th in fantasy points per game allowed to running backs. So James Conner should be a lineup lock for week 8. At wide receiver, Jaden Reed for a bounce-back week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Pass defense also for a bounce-back week statistically. Cortland Sutton, get him in your lineup against the Carolina Panthers. For the second consecutive week, we go with Noah Fant at tight end from the Seahawks, of course. 2 consecutive games of 60-plus yards for Noah Fant. You want a fantasy sleeper from the Seahawks this week? Jake Bobo to potentially get in the end zone. In larger leagues, you need a lineup streamer. In deeper league, go with Jake Bobo. And, of course, make sure you follow John on Seahawks.com with his injury reports every day to check in on the status of DK Metcalf. Thanks a lot. Back to you, Jen and John, for week 8 in the NFL. Seahawks and Bills. It should be a fun one for real life and fantasy purposes.
Okay, John.
Yes.
Have you gathered your thoughts?
They are gathered.
Okay, I've gathered my thoughts, and I have a thought about kickers.
All right, we're going from golf to kickers.
Well, I was going to go, I just hard pivot, right? Because I just needed
like
to
golf. I think it's a good segue.
Set. Well,
Jason Myers, good golfer.
Also, great kicker.
Mm-hmm.
What did he hit from last week?
59.
59?
Longest field goal in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yes. Which also is amazing to me because Younghoe Koo
is
a really good kicker.
Yeah.
61 would be Myers' longest. That was back in 2020. And I say this because this has become the year of the kicker. Like, we can talk about lots of different things in the NFL. I've been holding on to this one for a little bit. The kicking game actually made things really difficult for the Bills and the Jets a couple of weeks ago. But Jason Myers has been golden. And I had this conversation with him last week on why is this the year of the kicker? Like, is it the training that's going into it? Is it, do you just have bigger legs? Like, what is happening? He said, we've always been able to do it. It just takes one team to start taking that chance, and everybody else follows.
Yeah. There's a big, I'm sure it's named, but there's a phenomenon in sports of, once certain thresholds are crossed, and you're like, oh, we can just make 50-yard field goals, and then everybody starts making 50-plus yard field goals like their routine. Once, first 4-minute mile is this unreachable thing. And then it happens, and within a couple of years, a whole bunch of people ran 4-minute miles.
Yeah, here's a few of the numbers. The kickers this year are on pace to make 251 field goals from 50-plus. That would shatter the record, listen to this, set last year of 158.
Holy cow.
I mean, not even close. NFL kickers are hitting 76% of their kicks from 50-plus yards out this year. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And then Jason also said, part of this is once you see kickers do this and they become a bigger part of the game, now kids actually want to kick from a younger age. Yeah. So you're not getting the converted soccer player, which is what Jason Myers was. You were getting kids that from, 5th grade on are in kicking camps. And so their motions are just completely different and more efficient and stronger.
Although former soccer players work pretty well for the Cowboys.
I mean...
Might be the best kicker in the league.
Okay, that's true. Also on jury duty currently. That's bizarre because you want to know how often I want to sit on a jury? Never. I never want to sit.
Don't check your mail next week, Jen. You just spoke that right into existence.
I'm sorry. I have to go to work. Anyway, look, I don't necessarily want games to come down to field goals. I feel pretty good if that's the case. Where is Seattle at offensively, John?
I think they're still this whole team. They're still growing. We talked about this before, but you've got all new schemes to both sides of the ball, but I love the direction they're heading in, and I especially love last week that we started to see them get more balanced, which is what we've been talking about throughout these losses. As you get behind, it's hard to stay balanced. All of a sudden, you're playing from ahead. They didn't dominate the run game, but you had that threat of the run going. You were getting the running backs involved more, and Geno Smith was able to have probably his best game in terms of, if you watch the tape, how he played, he was phenomenal. But his numbers were, fewest completions and attempts and yards since the opener. But it
didn't feel like that.
No, because he played awesome. But I think part of that is what we're talking about. When it's not all on him and the defense has to respect the run game more, it's just he can be that much better.
Shout out to Ken Walker, by the way.
Playing through a lot.
His post-game interview with me on the bench. I think he was so hopped up on cold medicine. He couldn't barely finish the sentence. He was also really tired, and I give him a lot of credit for even stopping and having that conversation.
They got the ice pack on his neck.
Oh, gosh. But you know what? He wasn't taking, extra fluid or oxygen. You could just tell he was tired, right? Yeah. Now, to be fair, Ken, on a normal game day, is pretty, locked in and not smiling, but he looked a little bit, one step down from that.
Yeah.
Just really gutting it up on that one. What happens if DK Metcalf can't play?
You need a bunch of guys to step up. I mean, look, we've talked about receiver depth with this team for a while, so you can't obviously replace DK Metcalf. There's no other player like him on this roster and really in the league in terms of what he brings you physically. But you have a great 2-3 punch in Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith-Njigba, and then you've got depth that we really, beyond Jake Bobo a little bit, we don't get to see those guys in games other than special teams. But you've got Derek Young, they've got other guys on the practice squad, so it's. I think it's probably going to lean a lot on Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith-Njigba and Bobo, but you might get to see some other guys step up too.
And look, I always want to see DK out there, but don't you think this is a perfect Ryan Grubb opportunity? Yeah. Grubb has all of these packages and plans, and this week it could potentially just allow him to unveil another little wrinkle that he hasn't been able to do yet.
Yeah, we just talked about receivers, but obviously the tight ends have been a big part of this offense. Noah Fant's had, I think, 3 of the last 4 or 5 games he's gone over 60 yards. So he's been more involved. And Ken Walker, if you go look at his career pass catching numbers, 2 of his, I think it says 2 best reception games of his career were week 5 and week 6.
Yep, when he couldn't get the run game going, still very involved in the offense.
So I
however.
think, it's not just, which receivers step up. It's maybe you get the running backs more involved. Maybe you get more of the tight ends. But they do have a ton of weapons where, again, I don't want to say, you just plug this guy in and it replaces DK Metcalf, because you can't. But I think you've got enough guys to on the aggregate, make it work out.
Well, and certainly coming up soon, you are going to have more guys available on the offensive line. At least that is the hope. Mike Jarrell does a great job last week at right tackle. We'll see what he can do this week, because I think once you get a little bit of film, now teams have a way to attack you. So we'll see
but you
if
also
he can
get the confidence of getting that first game under your belt. I mean, I think he's going to be, as much as he said all the right things and it wasn't too big for him and all that, and he did play well, I'm sure he's going to be a little more calm and comfortable his second time around, assuming it is him. I guess, there's a chance maybe George Fant's ready, but
sure.
I think most likely we're looking at Mike Jarrell, and I think he'll step up to the challenge.
But there is also signs that Abe Lucas will be rejoining the team at some point.
Big.
Seeing him back at practice, I mean, it's huge. Not only is he physically
He's
huge,
a large human.
that would be huge, and it's something that Mike Macdonald really likes to see.
Just, you kind of, if you take a step back with Abe, all the stuff that he's been through over the last year, and this guy's been working his tail off now, and it's not easy to kind of be doing your own thing and training and strengthening the leg. I mean, this is a long grind back to where we sit today. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for putting himself in this situation to come back at this point in time, and should be really excited to have him out there and doing his thing. Now we're going to ramp into it and try to be as smart as we can. I think we got a really good plan. So just happy for him and excited to see him out there.
He followed up with that when he was asked about that plan to ramp him up. I said, maybe after the bye is what's realistic. So it's going to be a few weeks till we see him. But, man, getting a healthy Abe Lucas out, like, people forget how good – well, some do, but he wasn't his self last year. He was playing through that injury throughout the year, and he still played well when he was out there, but he only played, I think, 6 games. But if you go back and watch his rookie year when he was out there all year and healthy, I mean, he was a really darn good player. So – they can get back to that guy out there, that's going to help this line so much. And just the attitude he brings.
I was about to say,
it's not just the skill as a tackle, which he has, and he's a great run blocker and all these things, but like he brings that nastiness a line likes. And not that other guys can't, but he's really got that.
He really is.
Yeah.
Which is complete opposite of what he's like in real life.
Yeah.
He's a teddy bear. He's awesome. But you get him on game day, and I'm like, oh.
You know who he reminds me of in that demeanor, not as a player necessarily, but just demeanor-wise, is Breno.
Oh, yeah.
Breno was just
Good
sort of
call.
that, like,
Breno Giacomini.
if you talk to teammates stuff, you're like, man, he is just like
Don't
the
talk to him
enforcer
on
out there, and like, yeah.
So I think he got enforced a few times. I think there was a few penalties on Breno. I think there was a little fighting.
There were.
I think there was a little. I think there's a little going on. Well,
just brings you that edge.
Yes, it would be great to have Abe back on the field. The thing that I take away from Mike Macdonald's comment there is that they have a plan. They've always had a plan, right? This is not a surprise. They have always had a plan on when he was going to come back, and so they are just taking the next step in the plan.
Indeed.
Our next step is to take a break and pause for a word from our presenting sponsor.
Statistically, the world is losing color. Just consider all-white kitchens, beige baby nurseries, a sea of gray cars. But in the hundreds of destinations Delta flies to, you can rediscover color in the bright blue waters of Hawaii, the emerald green hills of Scotland, the berry pink cherry blossoms of Tokyo, and so much more. Sometimes opening your world is all it takes to open your mind, which is why when you fly Delta, your potential takes off when you do. Delta, official airline of the Seattle Seahawks.
We're going to get 2 things that John Boyle needs to see from the Seahawks to get a win on Sunday against the Bills in just a second. I would say a key to getting a win for any team in the league is to not have played the Lions the week before.
Yeah, the Seahawks did this to teams in the early Legion Boom era.
12 and 13, Yeah, I say this because if you watch Thursday Night Football, and I know many of you are listening to this after Thursday Night Football, we will see if the trend continues.
Are you saying people don't sit there and wait for this to be released?
I am not saying that at all. I'm just saying if they got busy and something happened and their schedules got disrupted.
We'll allow it. Okay.
Right? I am certainly going to keep a close eye on Thursday Night Football because it's Minnesota at the Rams. Minnesota playing a barn burner against Detroit last week. They lost to Detroit. Mm-hmm. No team has won the week after playing the Lions this year.
Yeah.
And in those games, they have lost by an average of 21 points.
Wow.
It's not even close. So we'll see if that continues. Obviously, for Seahawks fans, you'd like a bounce back effort, right? But the Rams are hosting. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what any of it means. I'm just spewing numbers and saying this could be interesting, and I might not be watching after the second half. I don't know, but I just thought it was interesting because who knows how long that trend continues. Also, I was buying time for you to tell me what it is that you need to see from the Seahawks this week to get a win.
I want him to turn Josh Allen back into a guy who throws some interceptions. I mean,
turn him back into a pumpkin?
Sure, if that's what I mean. Hey, Jared Goff, long interceptionless streak going into the game last year. Trey Brown, pick 6.
That's true.
I mean, maybe I'll get greedy and ask for pick 6, but I at least want to see an interception. 2 would be great. But yeah, secondly, I want, I know that finishing is important, but I want to see the Seahawks get ahead because we saw their offense really.
Yeah, you stole that one from me.
Look, you don't need to initially. I don't care if it's 3-0 or either way early. Just don't fall behind by enough that you get imbalanced on offense, and that's what we saw during that losing streak. Is every one of those games they trailed by double digits and kind of got pass happy. So I want to see it either play from ahead or just within a score, so you can have your whole offense open to you.
I'm going to say take advantage of home field advantage and the 12s because the splits, those road home splits for the Bills are really, really starkly different. At home, they're 3-0. They're averaging 272 passing yards. On the road, that's where their 2 losses have come, and they're just passing for 166 yards. So take advantage of the 12s and of what you've got at home. I'm with you. Get out to an early lead so that you are not forced to stray from the game plan, especially if you don't have everybody there, including DK Metcalf. And you know what? If Jason Myers wants to continue the year of the kicker and add on another 59-yarder, sure.
Sure.
I
would take 58. Let's not get greedy.
Says the person who just wanted 2 interceptions and a pick 6. I'm greedy with 59? Okay, fine. That's where we're going to end today's conversation, and we'll be back with you next time on another edition of the Seahawks Insiders Podcast.